and another struggling entrepreneur from this city, Mr. Anton Muhammad. Mr. Muhammad, thank you for your participation in this hearing. Now the chair recognizes the witnesses again. I want to thank you for the generous use of your time. You've been very, very patient with us, and we certainly thank you. And the chair now recognizes Mr. Philipe Dauman. Mr. Philipe Dauman, as I said before. He's the president and the CEO of Viacom Incorporated. As we all know, Viacom is one of the largest media companies in the world and owns MTV Networks and Black Entertainment Network, both of which feature music videos along with original programming. Mr. Dauman, you're recognized for 5 minutes of opening statements. Thank you for your presence.
Mr. Chairman's mic is not on. Can you hear me now? Modern technology.
Mr. Chairman, if you would indulge with the witness, looks like he has an emergency down there.
Sorry? Thank you, Chairman Rush and Ranking Member Stearns. My name, as you said, is Philipe Dauman, and I'm President and CEO of Viacom, home to some of the world's most iconic television entertainment brands, including MTV, Comedy Central, Nickelodeon, Spike, Logo, and BET, as well as Paramount Pictures, which produces and distributes motion pictures across the globe. The success and popularity of these and our other entertainment brands is rooted in the innovative spirit of our organizations. Viacom has two of the most experienced, well-respected leaders in the business running our TV programming divisions. Judy McGrath, Chairman and CEO of MTV Networks and a 20-year veteran of the company, and Deborah Lee, who has spent the past 2 decades at BET Networks and today serves as Chairman and CEO. Each a trailblazer in her own right, Judy and Deborah oversee diverse executive teams that are the stewards shaping the content on our channels. We understand that with influence comes responsibility, and we take our responsibilities seriously. We have a responsibility to entertain. If we fail to fulfill this most basic responsibility, we don't have a business. We have a responsibility to speak authentically to our viewers. Our entertainment has to engage the audience. Believe me, this is no simple task. Boomers, Generation X, progressives, conservatives, parents, children, and every race and ethnic background, we cover a lot of ground. The fact is that none of these distinct audiences is monolithic. That's why we spend a lot of time, effort, and money researching what our audiences want. A one-size-fits-all approach cannot succeed. That explains why Juvies, a real-life portrayal of the juvenile criminal justice system, aired on MTV alongside The Hills, a show about affluent young adults living the good life in LA. While on BET, you'll see Sunday Best, a search for the next great gospel singer, as well as Baldwin Hills, a reality series focused on the lives of upper-middle-class African-American high school students. Rather than stifling creativity in pursuit of consensus, we seek balance, a balance of content that entertains and reflects the full spectrum of our diverse audience's interests. But every show is not for every audience. This is why we have standards and practices that govern all of our programming and guide our ratings. Every show and every music video are reviewed by a diverse group of employees before they are seen on one of our networks. We play no role in producing or creating the videos. That's within the exclusive purview of the artists and record labels. We do, however, take a very proactive role, which is why some videos are edited and some are rejected. Once programming meets our standards, it's given a rating. Videos are rated in blocks. Parents and viewers can then rely upon these ratings to make informed decisions and use existing technology to block programming they don't want, or simply turn off the TV. That brings me to an equally important responsibility, the responsibility to engage, educate, and empower our viewers. We continually strive to make a positive difference in their lives and in our world. This commitment is part of our DNA, and I am proud to say we do it very well. Some of our most successful efforts include Viacom's worldwide No HIV/AIDS initiative, VH1's Save the Music Foundation, BET's HIV/AIDS Wrap It Up campaign, MTVU's fight to raise awareness about the genocide in Darfur, and an exciting new venture, Think.mtv, an online site designed to encourage and enable young people to get involved in public service, which launched just last week with the generous support of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Finally, we have a responsibility to listen to both fans and critics and engage in a constructive dialogue that will help us fulfill all of these missions. That's why I'm here today. And we don't just listen to our audiences and our critics, we provide a platform for their voices to be heard. That's why tonight BET will premiere the first of a three-part new special, Hip Hop versus America, a wide-ranging, insightful discussion about the impact of hip hop on our culture. For nearly 3 decades, Viacom has created compelling, entertaining, and yes, sometimes controversial programming. But as you'll see in this clip from Hip Hop versus America, we intend to continue to engage our audiences in a productive dialogue and create programming that reflects our dynamic popular culture. Please roll the tape.
Our next witness is...
Hip Hop versus America is BET's unprecedented and unadulterated look into hip hop and the controversies that surround it.
Sexism, misogyny, violence, the issues that always plague hip hop, indeed the whole black community. The question stands, is the genre that uplifted and inspired so many of us, is it now poisoning itself?
We had a beautiful art form, and we haven't pushed it forward.
These jigaboo, bumpoons, gold tooth, tattoos, bling-wearing hip-hop is here to stay. The question is, what kind of hip-hop we're going to fight for?
I would hope whatever we do because of how we want to deal with our own self-analysis and self-confidence.
Please turn the volume up.
The most important thing. And once we teach our kids that, they won't have this problem. I did an adult video that was for adults.
There's nothing wrong with a woman being a video model and using that to further her career. But why can't women be looked at as intellectuals?
The art form of dance, of choreography, has gone away. I mean, you might think of a Beyonce video or a Sierra video where you feel like, okay, they've done some real choreography here.
The country that we live in, it allows us to do that. That is what this country was built on, the freedom of choice. The things that these rappers are saying, I was doing. So I could still be out there doing. You lucky that I'm only up just saying. That's how I feel.
Our next witness is Mr. Edgar Bronfman, Jr. He's the president and CEO of the Warner Music Group. Warner Music Group recently separated from Time Warner Incorporated and owns the hip-hop label Asylum Records under the independent label group. Mr. Bronfman, thank you for coming. You have 5 minutes for an opening statement. Please push the button.
Thank you. Chairman Rush, Ranking Member Stearns, and members of the subcommittee, on behalf of the men and women of Warner Music Group, I want to thank you for inviting me to testify here today. We at Warner recognize that we have a responsibility for the content we distribute and present to the public. Mr. Chairman, we welcome your convening this hearing, and we hope it will allow us to engage in a thoughtful approach, a dialogue among artists, media companies, community leaders, and public officials that is best able to examine an issue of importance and civic interest. How we grapple with issues of humanity, including race and gender, ultimately comes to define what we as a nation stand for and who we as a people are. The history of our country is, in one sense, the unfolding story of how we've dealt with these issues. Often, artists who deal with the topics of race and gender in their works are seen as not only casting a spotlight on those issues, but sometimes as being part of the problem themselves. Creative works in any medium, not just music, can be controversial. In fact, they're often intentionally controversial in order to shed light on a social problem and to try to bring about much-needed change. Protest art, whether music, literature, or the visual media, has played a long and distinguished role in the history of our country. But we also recognize that some creative expression is capable of being more than controversial. Some creative expression can be offensive. At the same time, we recognize that sensibilities are individual by their very nature, and what may be offensive or inappropriate to some is important and necessary to others. As a result, when evaluating the content we release, the balance we have to strike requires us, on the one hand, to protect and defend an artist's freedom of expression. That's an activity we see as supporting not only our own business, but also our nation's principles. At the same time, we know that we must consider and very carefully consider the impact on our society of the content that we're offering to the public. Striking the appropriate balance among these often conflicting values, interests, and concerns is a complex and ongoing challenge. And it is also a moving target. In the 50s, many people were deeply offended by Elvis Presley. And a decade later, many more were scandalized by the Beatles and the Rolling Stones. At various points in time, even entire musical genres, such as rock and roll, rhythm and blues, and jazz, were branded as the work of the devil. Thankfully, as years have gone by, those perceptions have been altered. Public tastes and distastes wax and wane, which is why it is impossible to apply a uniform standard to any form of creative expression. However, to try and maintain our obligation as a responsible corporate citizen while dealing with these very complex challenges, we've developed and continue to evolve a set of practices to guide us. I'd like to give you a brief overview of our practices regarding content. They begin with the creative process itself. The executives at our record labels maintain an ongoing relationship with our artists and their music. Our aim is not to create art or to censor it, but rather to ensure that our artists are aware of the potential impact of what they've created. We are very careful to consider any potentially offensive content, including matters of race, national or ethnic origin, religion, age, gender, sexual orientation, or physical or mental disability. We also evaluate the societal context, cultural value, and artistic merit of the creative work, as well as the reputation, background, personal history, and intent of the artist, as well as how the work relates to and compares with other works. We label our content as explicit using RAAA guidelines to alert the public, especially parents and guardians of young people, to the presence of explicit content. Additionally, we offer edited versions of labeled product to our retail, broadcast, and digital partners so as to broaden the choices available to consumers. But reviewing our content is not a simple job, for many reasons, not the least of which is that there are no absolutes. Every day we grapple with finding the right balance. Different people draw the line between acceptable and unacceptable in different places. What's acceptable when it comes to creative expression is often determined by our age or class, our education or religion, our cultural surroundings, perspective, or profession, to name but a few of the influences on our individual attitudes. And the line keeps shifting. As I mentioned earlier, it is abundantly clear that what is deeply offensive to some people at a given moment in history can become, with the passage of time, not only acceptable, but in some cases, revered. So the message I wish to convey to you today is this. We recognize our responsibility with respect to our content. It is one we do not take lightly. Meeting that responsibility requires a delicate balance of many complex and difficult issues, one that can only be achieved through a constructive dialogue among artists, the industry, and the communities we live in and serve. And we are committed to being a strong and thoughtful partner in that dialogue. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Chair, thanks to the gentleman. Now we will recognize the President and CEO of the Universal Music Group, Mr. Doug Morris. The Universal Music Group owns Interscope Records, one of the most prominent, groundbreaking hip-hop recording labels in the world. And at the conclusion of Mr. Morris's opening statement, We will have to recess because there is a vote on the floor, and we will reconvene. There are 4 votes on the floor, and we will reconvene immediately after the conclusions of those 4 votes. I would beg you for your patience as we go over to vote upon the conclusion of Mr. Morris's statement. Mr. Morris, you're recognized. Thank you and welcome.